And you know what? This is just a topic. It's interesting. I interview so many different people, but today I have New York Times bestselling author Jennifer S Holland on the program. And she wrote a book about dogs. And I'm just so excited. The book is called Dog Smart, Life-Changing Lessons in a Canine Intelligence. Jennifer, thanks for stopping by. And wow. Okay, all I'm going to say is wow, based on dogs get a bad rap, all right? Okay, cats are the smartest animals, right? Dogs are just, they don't have any, they're not smart at all. That's the rap we hear all the time.
Yeah.
Why is that?
Well, I think because we think of intelligence in a very particular way. And I think if other animals aren't kind of following those rules, then we think, oh, they're just dumb. If my dog isn't responding to my commands, it must be that he's an idiot. Or if he's rolling in, a dead squirrel bones, he must be, something's wrong with him. But it's just really a matter of what does intelligence mean and reconsidering that. And I think there's a lot of intelligence in dogs. Absolutely.
I mean, I see it. I see it firsthand with my dog Chewy, and I literally, he just knows exactly when I'm coming up. It's time for me to take him for a walk at the end of the day. But he doesn't. He's not great at time. But there's so many things he understands
Yeah.
that we
Yeah.
just don't know. And I guess we look at always measuring human intelligence versus animal intelligence, and that's a
Absolutely.
mistake, isn't it?
I think so. And so my approach to this was that certainly dogs have the kinds of intelligence that we think about. I mean, the ones that respond to our commands are cool, the ones that can do tricks and all those things. It's like, wow, that's a really smart dog. But there's also just the kinds of intelligence that dogs need to be dogs. And that's like their olfactory intelligence just blows us away. Their emotional, their social and communicative intelligence. All of that is part of what makes them smart. And I think those are the things that we forget to consider when we think about intelligence.
100%. Because what is the most important type of intelligence? So I'm sure in the book you did research on the history of dogs, right? And did
Yeah,
everything. There's
there's
a
a bit of
lot
that.
of,
Bit of
yeah,
that, and I really dove into a little bit about the domestication of dogs and kind of how that came about and what that says about dog intelligence. Because really, I think we think about us domesticating dogs, but really, I think dogs domesticated themselves more so. It was really dogs becoming more tolerant of humans. And in a sense, that was a really intelligent move on their part because it allowed them to thrive thousands of years ago, and look where they are now. They're everywhere. They're everywhere we are. So good move, dogs.
definitely, and in so many ways. Who's smarter, dogs or cats? Did you do that in your research? Because that's the big.
Not so much because I kind of I wanted to get a little bit away from that whole hierarchy because I think again it's kind of, well, what kind of intelligence are we talking about? And so rather than sort of looking down and saying, well, you are smarter and we're smarter than this one but not that one, I think mammals in general have the kinds of adaptive intelligence, so to speak, that they need to thrive, and the ones that have gotten used to humans or take advantage of humans are the ones that have thrived the most. And so cats are certainly intelligent in that respect.
What surprised you most about dogs' intelligence?
There were kind of sort of little things along the way. Like I spent time with seeing eye dog trainers,
Uh,
and I learned about something that I really had never heard of before, and that was called intelligent disobedience. And the idea was that sometimes the animal knows better than the person and knows to say, no, I'm not going to do the thing you're asking me to do because it's a bad idea. So these dogs have to know, do not step into traffic if a car is way down the road, even though my person is telling me to go forward. And so they have to make that decision. They have to assess the situation and choose to, say no, even when they've been very, very well trained to say yes. And that was just such an interesting concept. I had just never really thought about that. And a lot of the working dogs in particular have to be able to do that.
See, and that's the thing we forget is the working dogs, right? We think of just the ones that are not trained. It's kind of like looking at a human being and saying, "Oh yeah, the just because I ran into somebody on the street, oh, humans are not intelligent. If let's say someone came from another planet,
Right, right.
but they didn't get to interview somebody who's a PhD or somebody really intelligent and say that's the same thing, right? It's about training of the dog versus cats, I think, have natural intelligence. I think dogs need to be trained almost like humans. This is something new I just figured out from your book, it sounds like.
Yeah, I mean they like us. They do better with training, and they learn very much like we do. They're going to learn step by step, and the better the trainer, the better the dog is going to, all this intelligence will manifest and show itself. But a couple of my training sources said we kind of owe it to dogs to train them well, because we have these expectations of them, and if they're not doing what we say, we're unhappy with them. So we have to be really good trainers and see it from their perspective and figure out, how can I inspire this dog to do what I want it to do, and take that responsibility on ourselves.
Dogs, we've really seen a big movement with dogs, right? People owning dogs. Is it increased pet ownership of
Absolutely.
dogs? Yeah.
Yeah. The pandemic, I think a lot of people got pandemic puppies, they call them. And unfortunately, a lot of people didn't, realize later that they couldn't really handle it. But I think there was this need, and there's a growing need in this sort of divisive world, I think, to have animals around us and to have pets, and that special bond that we have with dogs is extra special. So yeah, there's, a huge percentage of people in this country in particular have pet dogs. Absolutely.
And I think dogs are such a routine human, like humans.
Yeah.
We do way better under a routine. If we don't have structure and order and a routine, we do not thrive as humans.
Yeah.
The same thing comes with dogs. If it's in a disorganized environment, loud noises, the wrong environment where they don't get the exercise they need, then they're going to act out. They're going to be difficult.
Right, right. And this is where I think, again, we owe it to them to pay attention to their needs so that they can be good dogs. We if we're not giving them what they need because we assume, well, they have to fit into our niche, they have to fit into our lives. And yes, they do, and they do that remarkably well. But the more we can give them opportunities to just be dogs and to get out there and do natural things for them, I think the better they're going to do in a more confined situation.
I totally agree. What tips do you think you would offer? I know you're not a dog expert, but you learned to become more of a dog expert writing this book. What tips would you offer people that own dogs, that like look more at their dog today versus any other day, right?
Yeah.
And say, okay, now I'm going to really examine and look at their well-being more, and look at, oh, they are a lot more intelligent, I think, especially when they hear this podcast and this TV interview. What are your
Yeah.
thoughts?
Yeah, part of it I think is just paying more attention, being a little more patient, and learning. I talk in the book about learning the language of the dog. Really, getting to know what that body language is telling us, what their different vocalizations. They have a very intricate and robust kind of communication system that they use very, very well, among other dogs. And we aren't always that great at reading that. So I think our responses don't always make sense to the dog. So it's not them being dumb, it's us being, not
Right.
informed. So I recommend people really, read up on, and there are great resources out there with pictures of, dogs behaving in different ways, and if the hair goes up and the ears are tweaked, and what does it mean, and trying to understand that a little better, I think, is part of it. And then just, again, letting dogs be dogs when the opportunity is
Mm.
there, letting them make choices, giving them time to just run and sniff, not
Mhm.
rushing them along when you're walking them. Just being a little bit more, I think, thoughtful in that way.
What is the difference intelligence wise of a purebred versus a mutt,
So
a
it's
mixed dog?
it's one of my sources, Dr. Mark Bekoff, says there is no the dog, and his point being that every dog is different. You're not necessarily going to get a breed that is necessarily all X or Y, but certainly, selective breeding, you're going to get tendencies that are very powerful. I mean, genetics is strong, and so you're going to have a purebred dog, maybe like a border collie that's been, purebred for a long, long time, and they're really looking for that focus and that curiosity and that interest in doing a job and doing something, and that makes a dog seem very intelligent. Whereas your average mutt might be more just kind of goofing around and isn't necessarily that interested. But you'd be surprised if you give a dog the opportunity to try something like a sniffer class, something like that. Some dogs really surprise you and they do very well where you might not have expected them to.
And you don't like the whole labeling. I guess that's what you learned from the doctor. You don't like the whole labeling fact of the breed. Remember the book that tells about the temperament of each breed and what they are and how they are and all those different things. That's not always the case. It sounds like, but you just told me in this answer. So you
Yeah,
like the right dog for you, and it has all okay. You should never get a certain dog for kids because it's just out of because of these things, but ultimately it's all about training the dog from the day it's a puppy to
yes.
really have the right dog for you.
Yeah, yeah. But I would say that breed does matter, and that if that being very aware of what the tendencies of that breed is before you get involved with it. There are dogs that are just in general, a breed is not going to do as well in a particular situation. So I think it's definitely worth being mindful of that and reading up on that. But yeah, I think it's about really good training and about being again mindful of what the dog needs and trying to give that back to him.
And I always observe the the antecedent consequence. Okay, so based on what happened, why did they do it?
Yes. Yes.
That's the thing. Like for example, it might be doing something, but did you do something earlier that's it's stressed out about, and that's why it did it. Why
Right.
he or she did this. And that's the thing that's you have to observe them just like, okay, why are they stressed out? Why, or what is the reason that are behaving the way they're behaving? It's just like human beings.
Yeah.
There
Yeah.
is a reason they're behaving this way.
Exactly.
There's no, it's not like rocket science saying, well, I guess it's just that dog. It's just, no, it's the environment. People don't like loud noises, most people. You don't want to put if they didn't get enough exercise. Well, we get cranky if we don't get enough exercise or we don't get the chance to take a break,
Absolutely.
and all these things. So it's such great information. What is your whole hope for this writing this book?
I would love people to give dogs, I think, a little more credit for what they are as dogs, sort of outside of the human relationship and within it. But just to kind of step back and think about, these are our animals. They have a different sensory experience of the world. They really, they have so much to offer us, but also they are their own thing. They're their own entity, and it's interesting to kind of think about their needs in that context. But also just how to bond more with your dog, how to be more mindful, more aware of your dog and their needs, and as a canine versus a primate. I talk in the book about how it's not natural for dogs to hug and be hugged. They tolerate it, some of them love it, but these are things you want to be aware of when you meet a new dog, for example. Just not to assume that all dogs are the same and that you can treat your average golden retriever down the street the same as some chow that you met.
100%. Get
So
it. Best place we can find information on you. Purchase your books available on Amazon and all finer bookstores. Look at definitely independent bookstores if they're in independent bookstores. And best do you have a website for people to check you out?
I do jenniferhollandwriter.com, and trying to keep it updated. It's a little behind right now, but I'm getting back to it. So
All right. See, that's the biggest challenge.
it
You
is.
need to you need to keep writing and let other people take care of everything else. All
That's
right.
right.
Appreciate it, Jennifer.
Thank you. Thanks for
All
having me.
right. You're listening and watching the Neil Haley Show, and we'll be back in just a moment.